Benitec Biopharma. To give you a bit of an introduction, we've got the Chief Business Officer here, which is Mr. Carl Stubbings. So Benitec is a biopharmaceutical company developing a gene silencing platform technology for a broad range of life-threatening human diseases. I'll obviously let Carl go into more detail about that, so please welcome Carl to the stage.
Thanks very much, Glenn. I beg your pardon. Steve, I beg your pardon. Thanks very much, Steve. And thanks, Glenn, for your presentation. I'm not sure whether it's worse to be the first presenter at a meeting like this or the first presenter after lunch, but I can tell you that in the past I've made a mistake being the first presenter after lunch in asking the audience if they could hear me clearly, and some smart aleck down the front said that he could, and he'd be perfectly happy to change with someone who couldn't. What I'm going to do this afternoon is just give you a brief overview of Benitec Biopharma, a little about the company, then some background on how the technology platform actually works, an overview of our strategy or our tactical plan to commercialise that platform. Then I'll give you a very brief overview of the 4 in-house clinical programs that the company has, and a little more background on some of the other strategy around what the organisation is trying to do. And hopefully when I've finished, you'll all race out and buy millions and millions of shares in the company. This is the standard statement, and in most presenters that do this blow straight through this, I just want to make one point. Where companies like Benitec and others are is high risk, but it's also high return. So bear in mind that not all of the programs will be successful, but if they are, if one of them is, and you'll see when I talk a bit more about the strategy, if one of those programs is successful, that offers the organisation an incredible earning upside and hopefully a significant return on investment for its investors. To put it in perspective, when I joined the company about 3 months ago, I introduced this first line about an aim. It's a wonderful thing to be involved in biotech, particularly in the therapeutic space and particularly when you're filling unmet clinical need. And you'll see when we talk about our programs, there are some significant areas of unmet clinical need. But at the end of the day, we're a commercial organisation, and our goal and our target should be to create a competitive or appropriate return on investment for our investors and stakeholders. Benitec plans to do that by commercialising the CSIRO gene silencing technology, which I'll talk about a little more. Fundamentally, we'll do that by executing a commercial or one or more commercial relationships with pharmaceutical companies or other appropriate commercial partners. In the process of doing that, we'll demonstrate the broad applicability of our technology platform. A little bit of an overview of the company and how the platform fits together. Essentially what Benitec has is a very, very strong, dominant position in what's called gene silencing technology. It's been proven by other workers to be clinically efficacious and safe. We have a very robust patent protection portfolio, a strong pipeline, which is also very broad, and clearly an experienced board and obviously experienced management. We liken the actual gene silencing platform to the penknife, in that there's a number of different applications for the technology. It's a question of finding the appropriate disease and then matching that particular to the tool that's involved. As a result, the applications for diseases are significant, even enormous. And the programs that we've selected are those that would particularly showcase the breadth of therapeutic applications of what we call ddRNAi, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that actually means. How does the technology work? We call it ddRNAi, that stands for DNA-directed RNA interference. Is anyone in the audience a property developer or involved in property development? That's good, because the analogy I'm going to use, which our CEO used at a recent presentation, revolved around the development of the Rozelle near the Balmain Rugby League Club. If you lived in that area, I think they're planning to build some 700-storey building or something. Imagine that you're a resident of Balmain and you don't want that building to get built. You've got a couple of ways you could probably handle it. You could object through council and stop the plans being approved. That's a little bit like the DNA approach, if you like, but that's too late now. The plans have already been approved. You could go in there after it's built with sledgehammers and try and knock it down, but first of all, that's a lot of hard work, and they could build the thing again. Or you could develop a system that could identify the builders when they came to the site, and the system could eliminate the builders. Well, it's an interesting approach, unless you happen to be a builder, of course. But that might work, but then the builders might get smart and they might start to come at night. So now you've got to have a system that works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's probably a robot or something that eliminates these builders as they turn up to the building site. Then you have another problem. How does it know the difference between a builder and your mother or your mother-in-law or both? So what we've got to have is a robot here that can tell the difference between builders and your mother-in-law and only eliminate the builders. That very simplified explanation, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially how ddRNAi works. So again, I hope there was apologies to anyone from the building industry or from property development, but essentially that describes the function. What ddRNAi does is to use your own cells, once we've inserted the appropriate DNA construct, to continually produce an RNA molecule that will interfere with and shut down the particular gene of choice. If there's one thing I need you to take away from this technology, and that is, this is a method, once you've identified a gene that's causing a problem, to silence, knock down, turn off, whatever you like, that gene forever. And we think that's a very compelling case. And as the slide says, from one treatment to produce a cure for life. Very quickly, 8 steps involved. First of all, there are 22,000 something genes, which I know when that came out, when the human genome was mapped, it was disappointing to only be a couple more than a fruit fly, but that remains. There are 22,000 genes in the human body. Not all of them are doing good things. If you've identified a gene causing a problem, and you can identify what we call the Achilles heel in that gene, and that would be a region in the gene that was susceptible to RNA interference, then you can design and manufacture what we call a DNA construct. That gets inserted into the target cell and continues to produce that RNA for the life of the cell, acting as the interference and, as I said before, turning the gene off. Obviously, we have to get it to the cell, so we need to design a delivery vehicle or mechanism that will take the construct to the target cell. We have to test it outside of the body to see that it actually works. Assuming it's worked, we then need to test it in some type of animal model and then move on to toxicity, distribution, clinical trials, that's actually putting it in patients and prove that it is efficacious and that it does work. Benitec Biopharma has developed 2 pathways to what we call revenue. First of all, to advance our in-house programs, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a moment, the 4 clinical programs we have. And the second one is to out-license the project to other companies, projects that utilise that technology. The first of our 4 clinical programs is a treatment for what we call cancer-associated or neuropathic pain. Approximately 65% of cancer patients, terminal cancer patients, experience pain. This is pain that is largely refractory to morphine and any of the other analgesics available. Using Benitec's ddRNA technology, we have developed a potential model that will shut down that pain modality and once again make morphine active and allow those patients to continue in their last few years with some level of comfort. A little bit background on how the construct, this one is actually directed into what we call intrathecally, directly into the spine, one treatment. We call that compound Nirvana. The second program is a drug-resistant cancer. Non-small cell carcinoma is one of the most common cancers in the world. Approximately 1.6 million cases a year. Very poor prognosis. These patients frequently develop resistance to some of the chemotherapy agents. Again, our model once again makes these patients sensitive to chemotherapy, improves their outcome. We call that compound Tripitana. Viral diseases, hepatitis B, more than 2 billion people in the world suffer from this disease. So again, the hepatitis virus has its own gene. We have found a way to potentially knock down that gene. We call that HepANA. The last of our in-house programs is OPMD, ocular pharyngeal muscular dystrophy. This is an orphan disease. That means there's less than 1 in 100,000 patients suffering from it. These patients have difficulty swallowing, ultimately choke. There is no current treatment for them. Once again, we have a putative model for this treatment. There are multiple other applications: infectious diseases, cardiovascular disease, Huntington's disease, and so forth. Our out-licensing projects so far, we have out-licensed the program to Calimmune in the United States for HIV/AIDS, hepatitis C to Seri Therapeutics in the United States, and for a disease called retinitis pigmentosa to Genable in Ireland. This is just an update on where the programs are. You guys can't see the 1-minute sign coming up, so I'm going to have to keep moving along. I'm just going to touch on hepatitis C, which is a program that one of our partners is working on, to give you a sense of the scope. Last year, Gilead Pharmaceutical paid $11 billion to Biopharma assets, oral compound that was in phase 2 for hepatitis C. That product, as it turned out, this year didn't work. So the company paid $11 billion for something that doesn't look like it's going to achieve everything that they set out to achieve. The point of the story is there are significant amounts of money involved if you've identified the right type of disease. Our profile of selecting 4 or 5 different programs helps us minimise the risk of one of those programs failing. In itself, we've broadened our risk profile by doing this, and it improves our risk-to-benefit program. The leadership team, I've already mentioned Dr. Peter French, Greg West, Michael Graham is the original inventor, and then less stimulating and less significant myself. So in summary, Benitec Biopharma is a potent, long-lasting gene silencing platform. We have multiple patent protection worldwide. It's proven preclinical efficacy and safety, and a very broad pipeline to minimise the risk. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, I will be over there a little later on. Thank you.